Double P podcast. Double P.
What I like to call
Double P.
What I like to call
Double P podcast.
Welcome to Ice Cold, a podcast about AMC's The Terror. This year we're tackling Season 2, The Terror Infamy. In this episode, we'll be going over Episode 3, entitled Gaman.
Is that what it's titled?
That's what I believe it's titled. I'm not sure that's what I believe it's pronounced.
Oh, okay.
We here at Double P Media are always trying to do the best. My name's Bubba, and with me on this journey into some misery are two miserable friends of mine. First up...
We're not your friends.
Oh. First up, it's Mork. Mork, how are you doing, and what is your ranking out of 10 for Gaman?
Oh, man. Well, my ranking depends entirely on whether or not I can use a hyphen.
Sure.
Okay, great. And I'm well. Thanks for asking, Bubba. And you are. We are, of course. I'm going to give it five double M's.
Wait, you're 5 double M's?
Yeah, mortician-provided merkins, which may be necessary if Chester dies in combat. So it's something. This is how, for tonight, it's not a great ranking, but I'm optimistic looking into the future. What about you, Catfish?
Well, I am giving tonight 7 what I like to call triple Fs.
Triple Fs?
Yeah, and you'll see more how I break the rules all the time. Yeah, those are forced French kiss faux pas.
Oh, for Furuya. There's another F. Oh.
Yeah. When you're a beginner, usually you should go into things kind of tentatively. But the Akebono's like, this is the way I French kiss. I'm a suck your soul.
Is that what she was doing, or was she actually just trying to get Toonbach to come thundering out of the woods in exchange for the tongue?
Right, and that's what I thought. I thought it was a double T.
Double T.
Toonbach tongue twister. Toonbach-like tongues, and now Yuko.
Why is that only double? Why is that only double? That seems like it's a triple T.
Triple T?
Toonbach tongue twister.
Oh, okay. Well, Catfish, you went up to 7 this week, so I feel like you're more enthusiastic about this episode?
Yeah, well, so here's the deal. I realized that a part of what was exciting about last year's show was we got to see these people living in a way that we sort of hadn't experienced before, that I didn't know anything about.
Speak for yourself.
Right, exactly. Mork, double M.
Double M.
Minnesota Mork has lived in the privations that the people lived in last year in the Arctic.
No sympathy for Henry this week, guys.
No, none. And so I felt like we had a little bit more of that today. I thought maybe we might settle into kind of seeing how these people lived and what they experienced. So we get a little bit of that. But I'm not really that optimistic that we're going to get more, because then we spend time seeing how they're trying to tell us, well, these people in the internment camp have it bad. But you know who's got it even worse? If you're Hispanic in a Japanese internment camp, then you got it even worse. So I'm hopeful we'll get to see more of that. And that's really what I think will help. No, what I want to see is more of them, how their lives were, how they were able to survive in a situation that none of us will have to experience, even people from Minnesota. And so just as seeing a completely different way of having to survive and live last year in the Arctic, to see how these people struggled and maintained in the internment camp, I think would be very helpful, since they're obviously not really going to try to scare us that much this year.
Do you think we got any of that this week?
I do. I felt strong like the first 10 minutes of the show. We showed them they're trying to... The movie thing was really cool. They've got a person translating.
Sure.
They're doing all the sounds and everything like that. I thought that was interesting. They're showing them trying to grow plants, and then they have to build the walls. And then at some point we see that there's just dozens of buildings just out in the middle of forest in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Seeing some of those pieces made me hopeful that we'll get that. But then we do these side steps that aren't interesting or scary, and so then that makes me depressed again.
Well, let me go ahead and give my ranking. I actually am going to give it the highest ranking. I'm going to go 8 double Bs out of 10.
Double Bs?
Well, double Bs are what you don't want to hear when you're getting the ultrasound, and that is you're going to have a Bakemono baby.
That's fair. That was something that I was enjoying the show, that, you know, how much I was hoping that she's not having just a baby. So I was excited to see that towards the end, for sure.
I went up to 8, not only because that ending was so creepy, like, oh, snap, this is not good, but also there were just times in this episode where I thought, this is actually a beautifully shot show. Some of those shots of the camp, the dream of Henry and his wife dancing under the lights, I mean, I'm like, wow.
Absurd.
This is nice. Yeah.
It was simply sumptuous, yeah. A lot of the show, and we haven't really talked about this, but a lot of what excited me about the show, just from the trailers and stuff, was the look of it does remind me from a wardrobe, and I mean, it's a little later from a time period standpoint, but it reminds me a lot of Miller's Crossing, a wonderful Coen Brothers film, which is basically about men wearing cool fedoras. The costume designer and the production designer, yeah, they're all doing great. So no, it is certainly a treat, even when a couple of dots don't get connected. But no, it definitely looks great. Catfish, I totally agree. I'd like to see more of that. Could we? Because it feels like they don't. As far as we, the audience, are seeing a lot of the supernatural stuff, but Chester, he did a little bit, and I'd like to see more of that. You know, with the movie, and also later on in the stable stockade for the evil horses. You know, like that stuff is cool. And I'd like to see more of that than just, you know, Yuko peeking around the edge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we need Yuko more involved. That's why the end of the episode really got me excited. Speaking of more involved, because we've moved up our recording time of the podcast, we're going to get this out sooner after the episode. So we hope you like this, listeners. Let me say, though, that because kind of my time frame, I wasn't able to compile your feedback, your Toonbach-esque feedback for the Terror Infamy. So please, write us at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram. Join us at facebook.com/PHQ. Write comments on our YouTube channel. We want to know what you think. We always say that our opinions are just one of 3. So we want to hear what you think as well. And especially this week, now that the show has this, what I believe is a creepy, wonderful ending, we want to know what you guys think, what you guys want. And let me put a question to the listeners. You can write to us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all our sites to answer it. But before we dive into this episode, guys, I want to talk about Chester. We have all had problems with Chester. Chester's got problems of his own, let's be completely honest.
Yeah, we're not the only ones.
Now, if Chester was Billy Elliot is like, Dad, I don't want to work in the coal mine. I want to ballet dance. And it's like an empowering story, and we're all happy that Billy Elliot got to dance and live life his way. Chester should be this way, but because he was so tough on his dad, it wasn't just, Dad, I want to be a photographer. This is my interest. I want to date Luz rather than a girl of Japanese descent. You know, if he had said that, he'd be okay. But because in that first episode, he was so tough, and he was like, well, I don't want to fish all my life like somebody I know. I don't want to beg for food, which, boy, I think that is coming for you, Chester. Careful what you say. But because of that, he was a bit of a pill early going. Have you, listeners, turned around on Chester? Have you accepted that he's our flawed hero who possibly could be causing a lot of damage by everything he does? How do you feel about our hero, Chester? And I'll go around the horn to you guys first. Catfish, you've been especially tough on our lead character, Chester. How do you feel in this episode where he's heard go, go, go so many times that he figures out, well, the only way I can go is if I join with these people who are treating me and my family and my people terribly? How do you feel about Chester, Catfish?
I'm not sure whether you're trying to give him credit for actually going after he got the message pounded into his skull about 32 times over the last 2 episodes.
Come on.
I mean, I do kind of find it interesting that he didn't bring Luz into it, although he brings his buddy into it. I can see where he would think she would think that he was crazy. I don't know why he didn't say anything to his father, but instead kind of runs him down. At least I'm doing something, he says to him. I don't know why he's such a damn dick to his dad. I guess he's going to continue doing that.
Sorry, continue, Catfish.
That he's just going to do that so that there's some nice resolution at the end of their time.
How do you feel, Bork? What are your thoughts on the Double C code-breaking Chester?
So I was thinking a lot about sort of why I still have not even accepted, him as the hero. And I think one of the things that they did that is a really hard thing. I mean, in the first episode, we're seeing him essentially trying to get away from all of his relationships, whether it's, Luz and what they're doing with the baby and starting over and, all that, and his parents and moving and not doing what his dad does. And so basically, he's trying to cut himself off. And now he's in this position where he's supposedly building these relationships with people who, as far as we know, he doesn't like very much. It's one of the reasons. It makes him an unlikable character, I think. And that's a tough thing. I think that just the beginning of the introduction of Chester, it was really an uphill battle, and he hasn't reached the summit. I don't know if he will, but maybe he'll meet some cool guys in the Code Breaking Academy or something. Who knows? He needs like a cool uncle or something. He kind of reminds me of a really petulant Richie Cunningham. He needs a fawn. So I don't know who that's going to be, and I keep going back to, season 1, but, you had all of these, and they used some flashbacks and they cut away to what was going on in London to establish certain things about some of the relationships between all the people named John. But, these were long-standing relationships, and they did have a lot of, there was class, there was family, there was career, there was, unrequited love, all that they had to play with as they slowly went insane and ate each other. And we just don't have that yet. So I'm not going to I'm going to try to not put it all on Chester. I'm going to be able to live up to that promise, but he's in a tough position. Let's give him a break for 10 minutes.
I am not as tough as my two co-hosts are on Chester. I think Chester he comes across as very modern. These are modern kind of things. Let me do what I want to do. Dad, I'm going to find my own life. And now, why would you believe in these spooky old things?
He's the Andrew Luck of prisoners.
Well, right. He retired from being a prisoner, and now he's collecting his signing bonus to be in the Code Breaking Academy. One final thing, guys, before we really get into this episode, and that is that the very first episode of Season 2 was titled A Sparrow in a Swallow's Nest. And at the end of this episode, I kind of thought, oh boy, what is in Luz's nest? This is really something hideous. And if we're tough on Chester, I want everybody to talk just briefly how you feel about Luz, because I feel she is one of the most sympathetic characters on this show, and she's having it a very, very hard time. We call this podcast Ice Cold because of ice cold disses, and girls, her bunkmates, the people stuck in this situation with her, were calling her a whore in Japanese. That's very tough. How do you feel about Luz, Catfish?
I mean, I agree. I feel very sympathetic with her. I mean, she decided to keep the baby because she felt like that it was her responsibility and that it was something that she should do. And then she decided that it was right for her to join this situation. And like you said, I mean, they weren't completely mean to her. Before they called her a whore, they said goodnight.
Right. I was looking at the glass half empty. Thank you, Catfish.
No, they were like, goodnight, whore. So, I mean,
and they say romance is dead.
Right. It's a good news, bad news situation.
Mork, how do you feel about Luz?
I like her. I mean, I wish we knew more about her. So... we tend to watch these things very much, leaning in and trying to pick up on clues, and I think a lot of the double L's do as well, and that's why these kinds of things are fun. Even if the show hasn't quite hit its stride, it's fun to try to get ahead of the train a little bit. So I was thinking maybe one of the reasons why she didn't take, abortion smoothie a couple weeks ago was maybe it's not Chester's baby. Maybe it's somebody else's.
Well, I was just going to say, I think we can all agree that she could do better than Chester, right?
Yeah.
Are you saying Walt? Do you have other options here?
Walt from Lost? I agree.
No, his friend Walt. Walt, theoretically, we went to his bachelor party at the cat house. Did he ever get married? He might still be single.
There's still time. There's still time to get an annulment. No, I don't know. It just got me thinking about her because she hasn't, we're not seeing her do a whole lot other than react. And I mean, I actually think, one of the things that makes Chester not come off as a heroic as he definitely will one day. I mean, there were 2 times, and Bubba, you're steering the ship here. So, do we want to go start at the beginning and then kind of go through things, or shall I give you a comment about Luz and Chester that may take from various parts of tonight's episode?
Yeah, no, go. Let's take us there, Mork.
Well, I don't know if you guys noticed this. I mean, so we're watching the movie, and Chester gets overwhelmed, and he goes outside, and he's in the gazebo / urinal, and then we see him after the movie. I mean, first off, I don't know about you guys. All I could think of was as he and Luz are walking out of the theater and they're holding hands was, did he wash his?
Oh, come on.
Well, that's what I was thinking. But they're walking along, and then he just ditches her. And this happens.
No, but see, that's the thing. I don't think that he ditches her, and that's another thing that's cool. It appears at first as if they're not separated by sex, but then she's with all the women. I think the situation is all the unmarried men are in one barracks, the families are in their own barracks, and then the single women are in their own barracks. So it's not that he ditches her; it's that they have to live separately.
Okay, so maybe...
I mean, I'm anti-Chester as the next guy, but, I mean, that's really besmirching his character.
Okay, well, keep fighting for it. So in the morning, when they're walking along, and then Yuko's peeking up from the corner, he just walks off then. Then there's another time where they're walking along, and he ditches her. So there's something weird about how, he's not... he's there... He has, basically, he shows up at the orphanage, and he's like, "Baby, I got a plan. Okay, we're gonna take the car that I stole back from the guy that ended up dying on my dad's boat, and we're gonna go to my teacher's house, and then we're gonna get arrested, and then I'm gonna take you to an internment camp where."
Well, he didn't take her. He didn't want her to come.
Once again, you're besmirching. Why are you making me stand up for Chester, for God's sakes? Chester said, stay seated down so that they don't see that you're pregnant. Stay here. He's trying to either protect her or ditch her once again.
Mork is so anti-Chester. He's like, and then at the end of the episode, he's like, you stay here at this camp. I'm going to cruise the Pacific.
Is it possible?
Okay. Yeah, tell me.
Could Chester be the narc?
He could be a lot of things. But he keeps getting this message, go, go, go. I think, if you don't believe in the spirits, it would be hard to accept these messages. But as Catfish described it, he keeps getting it, and he gets it in the movie. It's like, Chester, you have to go. It's like, do you have to go to the urinal? What's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. I went. Leave me alone.
And Chester keeps taking photos, and I was wondering, because I didn't think the photos were especially artistic, is Chester trying to see the Bakemono again? Is he trying to catch this thing, which he's beginning to realize is stalking him? And Yuko is stalking him. And then, I don't want to put this out there, but is Yuko jealous of Luz? Because as soon as she sees Chester and Luz, she's kind of like off the Chester train, and she's like, I'm going to focus on her, because, not good.
Well, I don't know why she's jealous. She's got her own little dalliance going on with Furuya.
I mean, it could be a bit of, oh, damn it, what was that Drew Barrymore, evil babysitter movie?
51st Dates.
the end of the podcast, boys and girls.
All right, we apologize. I don't know it more.
No, Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy. So she's got like a Poison Ivy thing where she's like, yeah, let Luz deal with giving birth to my monster baby, and then she'll die in childbirth, and then I'll raise it with Chester. Like, there seems to be a little bit of that going on, right? I mean,
I don't know. I still don't know why she wants Chester. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what Chester did, unless, you know what? Maybe this is a warning. This is a good series to show disrespectful Japanese children. If you don't honor your mother and your father, the Akebono will come after you. Because that seems to be the worst thing that he's done in this entire series, is be a dick to his dad.
Well, his dad's getting him back, let's be honest.
Yeah, his dad will. And to be fair, look, if Catfish is going to stand up for Chester, I'm going to stand up for the J. Edgar Hoover like tactics of the U.S. Army, because in the dream sequence, Henry, he didn't look like a simple fisherman. When he's dancing around in that tuxedo, he did look like a spy. So maybe that's why he got taken away. So let me just let's just factor that into our decision.
Well, why don't
you're saying that Dream Henry is a spy?
Look, talk to Freud. Chester was talking about Freud in the extended episode 1. He has a whole thing about Freud that's really key. You should look it up. It's online.
Let me say that when Henry comes back and who knows what's happened to him. He's suffering from frostbite. He's possibly been beaten. He's certainly had psychological torture from Nick the Narc. And he just becomes so negative and depressed. And I thought to myself, he really is Chester's father. No, I'm kidding. How did you guys feel about Henry, who's actually been a great character? I've, in these first 2 episodes, really liked him. Seeing him broken, that was very, very tough.
Well, for a minute, I thought I was watching Hard Knocks.
He was broke like Coach Gruden watching his backup quarterbacks? Or
with his feet.
Oh, yes, good point. Why don't you tell everybody what reference you're making now?
I'm making reference to the frostbite that star wideout Antonio Brown got on his feet for going barefoot into a cryo chamber, so he can't play for the first few weeks. So,
yeah, that looked rough on that show.
It's not pretty. But also, as Catfish will remind everyone, I am from Minnesota. I've seen far worse frostbite in far more sensitive places. So,
yeah, I think the main problem with Henry, honestly, is, I mean, his feet are probably going to recover. Those didn't look like feet that you couldn't come back from. But really, what's broken is his spirit. I mean, he is just, he snaps at poor Luz. She's just trying to help out.
Oh, yeah.
But he thinks anybody could be a spy now. Are you a little disappointed that we didn't see a little bit more about what actually happened with Henry? It's kind of weird. I'm not sure why they brought them back. I would like to have seen more of what happened.
Well, should we assume, Bubba, you tell us, should they assume that they killed Nick and then Henry got some additional...
That he went down in the ice last week? I would feel terrible for Nick the Narc if that happened to him.
If that happens, you pass out in like 30 seconds from the hypothermia. So it's not
a good way to go.
Very peaceful, says Minnesota Mork.
Thank you.
So, guys, in this episode, we met 2 American soldier characters. We had Major Bowen, who seems to be overseeing the camp. Comes across relatively nice as he gives Amy. Amy goes to see him about being a secretary.
Yeah, he could see that she is suspicious, but he may not care. That is, as we all know, C. Thomas Howell still playing penance for wearing blackface in a movie from the 80s called Soul Man.
I thought he did a good job, didn't you, C. Thomas Howell?
I thought he was great, too. The last time I saw him was in the Amazon series Bosch, where he played a guy who looked really rough, kind of like a homeless dude, and he cleans up real nice. He's looking good.
Do we suspect he'll stay nice, or do we suspect he is going to turn into just another thing torturing our poor Japanese people in this situation?
Yeah, I'm going to go with B.
We also met a character named Colonel Stallings, played by our good friend Reed Diamond, who gives Chester the quiz And Chester solves it. Chester uses his brain to solve this quiz they've given him and crack the code. Good work, Chester. Any thoughts on how Colonel Stallings will fit into this bit of going forward, or was this a one and done for him? What do you think?
Boy, if it's a one and done for him, how the mighty have fallen. I mean, he was a series regular on the last few seasons of Homicide, which was a long time ago.
Hey, now,
I think he's been in some other things as well.
Oh, well, he's going to, according to IMDb, which you can't always trust, he is in next week's episode. So Yoko hasn't killed him yet. All right, so we meet these two people, and we see how these poor Japanese Americans are trying to make the best of this terrible situation they're in. They're having their kids play softball. They have a garden, like you pointed out. But even in that, very symbolic, Chester's mom is trying to grow this food, and she takes a bite of it because, hey, something's finally growing, a great sign, and she bites into it. And what is that, a maggot? Oh, my God. Oh.
Isn't an actual pregnancy a sign of life?
That was pre-existing life, and unless they're going to go completely off the board, that is not something you can eat.
Oh,
well,
okay.
Speaking of that, Chester's mom, Asako, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Oh, are you going to bring up an ice-cold moment?
I am going to bring up an ice-cold moment. Do you want to say this nominee for our ice-cold moment of the week, Catfish?
Yeah, Chester's mom, who seems to be kind of the peacemaker. She's trying to keep everybody happy, and she's friendly to Luz. But she says about Luz, Luz ruined things for Chester.
Ouch.
Now,
ice cold.
I don't know. In the world of things that are happening right now, I'm not sure that Luz is Chester's biggest problem.
Oh, no.
Well,
no. Well, his mom is putting up these things to ward off the evil spirits, but she may make a big faux pas at the end of the episode. Chester is leaving. He's finally going, like people said, hey, you can go. Yet she takes off a bit of his hair. And I wonder if that's how Yuko is able to stay. What do you think, Mork? Did Chester's mom make a tragic mistake?
I think it's one of those. This is definitely a as Winston Churchill would say, progress, not perfection. So, yes, she held on to some of his organic matter. She was going to keep it very close to her. But every other part of Chester she got rid of. So that's pretty much a win for not just her, but the whole camp. So I think it's pretty fair.
Listeners, please join us on Facebook and tell these Chester haters to chill out, for God's sakes. Good grief. He's really kind of not done much of anything wrong, and you guys are so mean to him.
I don't know, but he hasn't done a lot wrong. But on the other hand, he hasn't done anything right.
Exactly. Yeah.
He fell in love with a wonderful woman.
Yeah, that's I would classify that more as Luz's mistake.
Oh boy,
than Chester's win.
Well, how about somebody who I believe you guys are going to say is worse than Chester? How about R.I.P. Furuya? Furuya, we hardly knew you. But what we did know, you were a jerk. You possibly probably beat your wife before she died. You got blinded, and then you've been terrible to everybody. Today, you got out of this terrible situation. You're sent to this camp, and then you choke Toshiro?
No, I'm on Team Furuya. Now, I will admit that all the bad things we heard about him happened off stage, so to speak. None of those things could be true. The people could have been spreading rumors. All we see is the poor guy gets blinded. The next thing that happens is Akebono takes over and makes him start strangling. It's horrible. And then, of course, she gives him the fatal slow French kiss. But
we're forgetting some really insightful and productive support from our boy Chester, who's like, hey, Furuya-san, I know you recently had a psychotic episode, but I brought you a bottle of alcohol. So can we... I'm trying to lay off on Chester, but, come on, man.
He snuck into the barracks to give it to him. Chester has been playing loose with his own safety and security. He climbed up the watchtower to smash that spotlight, which had been giving him trouble all this time. Then he broke into the barracks to give this SOB Furuya some drink, but also, I believe, to find out, hey, Furuya, is this the Bakemono? Is this the evil spirit? Tell me what you know. And so...
Can we just call him Double C from now on?
Double C?
Yeah, Chucklehead Chester.
That doesn't seem as terrible as all the terrible things you guys have said about him, so sure.
So okay, so let's treat Double C with a little bit of kindness for just a moment. One thing that I want to say that I thought was really cool, that I want to see more of, and this goes back to the very first shot of this show, was we get Crazy Legs GI walking Furuya out into the woods. So what do you guys think that means in terms of Yuko's ability to control the American GIs?
She can take over anybody, which makes it strange that she is, as we said before, seems to be completely focused on tormenting the poor Japanese who have their own problems.
Well, now come on, time out. They got movie night, and they still have their dreams. So,
well, you forgot number 3. They're about to lose Chester.
Oh, there's that. But that's only this camp. You can't say that about... I mean, there's only one Chester, so there were other...
Thank God for that.
Unfortunately. So I don't think that quite qualifies. But I thought that was a really cool wrinkle to see that. And it's the kind of thing where... And again, I'm going to keep going back to it, but only because they named the show The Terror. But there were some tropes that Toonbach had where, if somebody was going off on their own onto the ice, we knew that we were going to see or hear something bloody and funky and scary. So there's just not as much anticipation in terms of, oh boy, he better not have his tea leaves read. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that is. So I'd love to see how, I want to see what's going on with that GI. Who does he remember any of this? How did he come across Yuko? Did he see her? Did he go to the same brothel? Like, what led to that happening? Because that's where I wish.
Well, how is Major Bowen going to react when one of his prisoners ends out in the woods with his tongue ripped out? Ugh.
Well, he was a blind prisoner, so I mean, come on, he wasn't going to help build the wall, right? All
right, so speaking of building a wall, Chester and Walt are building the wall.
I love what I know when Bubba's going to edit me out.
No, he needed you for that transition.
Yes. Speaking of building the wall, Chester and Walt are on this wall duty. They meet other people there at the camp. I know one of them is named Ken. They see Japanese Americans who have enlisted, and Chester, of course, he's just dooming his fate by saying, God, I'd never do that. I'd never do that. Then later in the episode, once again, he's going to Walt and he's saying, when your dad said those things about going, was that to both of us? And Walt drops another ice cold nominee. He says, no, that was just you.
Now, you're missing, though, an important feature here. And I don't know if it's hard for you to notice, because we essentially had... Bubba, you showed up in this episode.
I did?
You did show up in this episode. First of all, you had your ice-cold moment. You were one of those cool guys from the big city who said, where are you from? And Chester said Terminal Island. And then, Bubba, you said, well, you can't miss what you never had. Totally slamming Terminal Island. And then in a super Bubba move, later on, he sits next to Chester's sister and he says, hey, I hear from Terminal Island. That place sounds pretty cool.
I should point out we keep referring to Amy as Chester's sister. Amy is Walt's sister, so apologies to all the listeners how we're getting that wrong. But yeah, Ken is making a move. George Takei is suddenly kind of warm a bit in this episode. He's like, if people can fall in love here, and he's definitely making a stretch about what Ken and Amy might do. He's saying if people can fall in love in conditions like this, maybe there's hope for all of us.
They may not fall in love, but I predict that Amy will need the doctor.
Yeah, that's going to be one busy midwife.
It's going to be a sign of life here.
All right, so I mentioned these swallows earlier. When Furuya went nuts and started choking Toshiro, he was like, swallows, swallows, swallows. What do you guys think that's about? Is that what I referred to, the sparrow in a swallow's nest? Is he having visions of this baby that could, be a very bad omen-esque baby popping out of poor Luz? Why do you guys think that he kept saying that? The swallows are everywhere.
Well, I think the swallows, we did have birds earlier in the episode. I don't know whether they were swallows, but to me it just seems more like an ill omen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. So, as I've said before, Chester is given an interpreting test, and can you read these Japanese phrases? Chester breaks the code. This Colonel Stalling seems to like what he does because Chester's going to ship out in 2 days.
Luckily, there's a war going on, so the military terms aren't that important. So, don't worry about that. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. But I think it's the kind of thing where, we as the members of the audience, have gotten pretty good at plot. Basically, there's a spy who is he's got a poem in his pocket, and then he's a Japanese soldier that they killed, right? I mean, it wasn't like I don't understand from a spy craft, and obviously, Bubba. I know that you were in naval intelligence for many years, so maybe you can explain this to me. But who did they get this letter from? Who was it intercepted from? How is this going to help in terms of they're just going to wait? Chester's going to be sent somewhere to comb through the pockets of dead soldiers looking for letters that were supposed to be sent back home with code. I mean, they're sending it back to Japan. I mean, walk me through the espionage.
Well, because it's not electronic communication. Everything is communicated by either somebody bringing a message and telling somebody verbally, or you're going to write it out. So, of course, you're going to have a secret code if things need to be written out. And so...
But if he's writing home...
He wasn't writing home.
He was not writing home. It was, I could feel, even though it was foreign in a poem, you could tell that it's kind of hinting at things. It's almost like getting on the phone and someone saying, yeah, that package is coming. That package is coming.
Yeah, sure.
It was that kind of thing. It was under the guise of it being a letter written for someone at home or something he was going to drop off to someone. Is your problem with are you saying they're going to trust Chester to break the code in the field?
I guess it was just, I'm probably overthinking it, and I will admit I am 100% overthinking it. But there's a lot of parts of this show that they sort of jump ahead. And so let's go back to Henry in North Dakota, and Henry comes back, and the last time we saw Henry, he basically had all the power over Nick, and was like, yeah, we're not going to take any of this stuff from you, pal. Maybe we're going to kill you, maybe not, but he was 100% in control. So he comes back, and he's worried about spies and then some, I'm assuming, spirits and whatnot. What happened there? I don't know. So it's just there's all these pockets of potentially really, really interesting things that if we knew a little bit more about them, I think we'd be thinking about them more as things that may or may not be related to them are happening down the road. And so a lot of those really interesting nuggets, at least, and I'm just speaking for myself, we're not getting. We're getting post nugget, but we're not getting the actual nugget to be thinking about. So this is something that I enjoyed that interaction, and it's great to see good old Reed Diamond in a military uniform. But it just felt like it was giving us a lot of, unfortunately, arbitrary information, which it is fine for right now, but in terms of setting up the stakes for later, so when we're seeing Chester at work, if we don't have a really good understanding of what everyone there is trying to accomplish and how and why, then a lot of what we're going to see him do is just running around. And unfortunately, 3 episodes in, that's kind of my expectation. So sorry for the overreaction.
It was an overreaction. Thank you for admitting it. Yes.
Oh, that's the caveat. Oh,
okay. Guys, I want to point out real quick that I think, Mork, the reason why, hey, we have to jump ahead to, we're not going to stay focused on Henry and what happened in North Dakota, is because they're trying to cover a lot of the Japanese-American experiences during World War II here. And so one of the things is that in Minnesota, at this Fort Snelling, they were training people.
5 minutes from my high school home, by the way.
Oh, wow. So they were training Japanese people, and Japanese women were allowed to join the Women's Army Corps and get language training because they were focused on training of linguists for the expected invasion and occupation of Japan. And so maybe if this show is trying to cover so much, they do kind of, for lack of a better word, have to hashtag skip ahead. And maybe we're missing that. I would point out that in the first season, that first season covered several years. So they skipped a whole winter between episode 2 and 3, I believe, last year. But you're right. Some of these things that to have Henry go in such a whiplash from being strong and confident and kind of our moral rock to suddenly being this broken man, that is a very quick turn. But I would get ready and assume we're going to have a couple more turns. I mean, at this rate, Luz could give birth, what, next week, the week after?
It could have already happened.
Yeah. I mean, we are talking about World War II, so it's, I mean, most likely the baby from 1942 has been delivered.
All right, so you guys are always so tough on Chester, but is this the right?
Rightly so.
Is this the right plan? He's been told to go. He's starting to believe there is something kind of supernatural. There's always ominous wind here at the camp. So is it right to go? Luz's first reaction is, Chester, you're running away. His dad flips out and is upset that he's running away. Is this the right move for Chester? The way he presents it to Luz, where, look, I'll be making money, I'll be building for our family. He doesn't say, P.S., I'll be away so the supernatural monster won't be here. But he does seemingly have good reasons for doing it. How do you guys feel Chester's move is? Did he have any other move?
Well, I do think that it was that it was the right move, and it's funny that even though I think the show is making a jump for Chester that he wouldn't normally make. Maybe, you know, when Luz tells him how she tripped, he automatically assumes, oh crap, it could be the Akebono, instead of saying maybe it's all these women who are calling her a whore, which is where you would think he would normally first go. But, so, I mean, that's one point in Chester's favor. 75 different people tell him to go, and it's not until Luz gets tripped that he's like, maybe I should go.
Thank you, Luz. Guys, do you have any more Ice Cold nominees? Because I think it is time to get to our Ice Cold diss of the week.
I've got a hypothetical Ice Cold. I mean, if you're watching the show, you're definitely thinking it. So I think this should certainly qualify as an Ice Cold.
Let's hear it.
Well, right after he says, look around you, look at this beautiful prison, all of this misery and humiliation, it's for you. You know, he says, if I close my eyes, you can pretend we're somewhere else. I'll give you dollars to donuts. She was thinking, well, if I close my eyes, I can maybe forget who I'm with.
Oh! Now I did have another nominee for Ice Cold Moment, an unexpected one. It's in the movie within the show after the dude gets shot, and the guy goes, "That's for you, Morgan. That's it for you, Morgan." It's really nice to kill somebody and then give them a line.
Oh yeah, you got to do that. That's class.
Well, after you shoot him, he may have been confused as to who that was for. Oh, this is for me?
Who that? Okay, I'll take it.
Oh, man, bite your tongue, as Yuko did. I want to say Yuko gets my final nominee for Ice Cold Moment. She's like, what did you say? What did you say? What did you call me? And Furuya, I didn't write it down exactly. Furuya's like, you know, you're ravishing or you're radiant.
Exquisite.
You're exquisite. And she didn't take that too well. She gave a nonverbal Ice Cold back to him.
Yeah, well, maybe also he didn't pay for his tea. Has anybody gone over the books?
Well, she left the equivalent of tea leaves all over his face in blood.
No, that was... Yeah, I mean, that was great. I mean, I do think that the moment, so after he says goodbye, and after he says goodbye not just to Luz, but to his dad, and he's got the walk-off, and all the people in his family are standing 10 feet apart, so he can say goodbye to them one at a time, which is how it works in real life. Luz comes and finds Chester's mom and says, she's been bleeding and she doesn't want to see the doctor again. And, oh yeah, sure. No, by the way, there's a new midwife. Unfortunately, I don't know if you guys caught this, but I was watching this with the closed captioning on, and it's like, well, there's a new midwife, but unfortunately, she only takes payment in cameras. So,
aw, he sold that camera to get her new clothing.
I know,
babies. I'm still pitching either good night whore or she ruined things for Chester. I really felt like it was Luz's ice cold night tonight for me.
Well, then that convinces me. I say, as the recipient of several ice colds, we'll give it to Luz's rough existence there at the camp. Next week, guys, we're going to be looking at an episode entitled "The Weak Are Meat." Chester, often searched for a better life, is treated with hostility by his fellow Americans. Luz hopes to be accepted by Henry and Ahsoka in their new home as the Japanese-American community celebrates a festival to commemorate the spirits of those who have died.
Well, that's a good idea.
Everyone we've left behind. Furuya's wife, Walt's dad.
Poor Walt.
We hardly knew you, Furuya. Everybody, please reach out to us and tell us what you think. That's all that matters. You can reach us on PHQ Facebook page, facebook.com/PHQ, on Twitter and Instagram @PHQ, and on YouTube, just search Ice Cold The Terror, and you'll find our podcast there. In iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, search for Double P Podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, then the word podcast. Mork, how can people find you on Twitter?
Oh, they can find me at Extraordinary. That is extraordinary with a W in front of the final R.
And Catfish?
They can hit me up at CJGman67. No R's.
And you'll hear us next time on
Ice Cold.
Old.
I got something in my throat. It's Furuya's tongue.
Oh, Furuya, we will miss you, buddy.
Yeah, but I'm not going to miss the magic chimes that have been going on in the background the whole time.
Let me tell you something. Furuya didn't see that coming. Hello.
Oh.